The lonely escape. The man had grown tired of the city, the endless noise of traffic, the glowing lights of towers, and the restless voices of people had broken his peace long ago. Every day felt the same, a circle of rushing crowds, heavy smoke, and silent nights that offered no rest. He had always dreamed of living away from it all, far from the confusion, where he could hear nothing but the wind and his own breath. So when he found the small, lonely cabin for sale in the deep forest, he felt something inside him whisper that this was his chance. The cabin stood miles away from any road, hidden between thick walls of trees and shadows of tall pines. It looked old and forgotten, its wooden walls weathered by rain and time, its windows covered with dust. To others it looked broken, maybe even haunted, but to him it looked perfect. It was a place where no one would disturb him, no one would ask questions, and no one would remind him of the world he had left behind. The first day he entered the cabin, he felt a strange mix of comfort and unease. The silence was so deep it almost pressed against his ears. The air smelled of old wood and damp soil, but he liked it. He unpacked his small bag, lit a fire in the old stone fireplace, and sat down with the feeling that for the first time in years, he could finally breathe. But as night fell, the silence changed. It was no longer soft or peaceful, it was heavy, almost alive. He sat in his chair listening to the sound of the fire, when a faint vibration touched the floor under his feet. At first he thought it was only his imagination, but then it came again, a low hum, like the sound of distant machinery hidden beneath the ground. He leaned down, pressing his hand against the floorboards, and felt a tiny tremor moving under the cabin. It lasted only a moment before fading away into silence. He frowned, telling himself it must have been the old wood settling. But when midnight came, the vibration returned, stronger this time. The fire flickered as if shaken by an unseen breath. The man looked around the cabin, his heart beating faster. But there was nothing outside the window, only the forest sleeping in the moonlight. The hum faded once more, leaving the silence even heavier than before. The next morning he tried to ignore it. He walked through the forest, listening to the birds. Feeling the cold wind on his face, he gathered wood, boiled water, and forced himself to believe that what he heard was nothing more than an echo of his own loneliness. But when the second night came, the sound returned. This time it lasted longer, pulsing through the floor like a heartbeat. It was so steady, so controlled, that he knew it was not an accident of nature. He began to wonder about the history of the cabin. Who had built it? Why had it been left behind? The wooden walls showed marks of repair, as if someone had tried to cover or hide something long ago. The basement door, half broken and covered with rust, caught his attention. It was strange, too heavy for such a small house. With locks stronger than the cabin itself, he stared at it for a long time, a feeling growing inside him that the vibrations were not under the forest, but directly below that locked door. At night he lay awake on his bed, unable to sleep. The hum rose again at midnight, shaking the glass of the small window. This time he could almost swear he heard something else beneath the sound, a faint metallic echo like a deep voice trying to speak through the earth. He sat up in the dark, sweat on his forehead, his eyes fixed on the basement door glowing faintly in the moonlight, fear mixed with curiosity. He told himself he had come here to escape, to find peace, not to chase shadows. But the sound would not stop, and each night it grew louder. It was no longer just a noise, it was a call, something alive waiting in the dark below. He could feel it pulling him, whispering through the floorboards, telling him he was not alone. The man tried to light another fire, tried to drown the sound with the crackling flames, but his hands trembled and every shadow in the cabin felt alive. The hum spread through the air until even the walls seemed to shiver. He closed his eyes, telling himself he would leave in the morning, return to the city, forget about the cabin. But when he opened them again, his gaze returned to the basement door. The locks looked weaker in the flickering firelight, and the air around it seemed colder. He knew deep inside that whatever was hidden beneath the cabin had been waiting for someone like him, and now it had found him. The man sat frozen in his chair, listening to the floor tremble beneath his feet. The lonely escape he had dreamed of was no longer his. Something ancient was calling from below, and the silence of the forest was only the beginning of a secret that could change everything. The hidden door. The man could not escape the thought of the basement. All day he tried to distract himself by walking through the forest, chopping wood and boiling water. But no matter what he did, his eyes always turned back to the heavy rusted door beneath the cabin. It was as if the sound below wanted him to notice, wanted him to open it. The silence of the forest no longer brought peace. Instead, it pressed against him like a weight. By evening, the vibrations returned, stronger than ever. This time, they did not fade quickly. They pulsed again and again, like something was breathing deep in the earth. He placed his ear to the wooden floor and heard the strange hum rising in rhythm, steady and cold. It was no accident, no broken machine. It was alive, waiting. His hands shook as he lit the oil lamp and walked slowly toward the basement. The basement door stood in the corner, covered in dust and spider webs. Its frame was thicker than the walls of the cabin, as if whoever built it wanted to keep something locked away. The man grabbed the old handle, but it would not move. The lock was heavy iron, covered in scratches from someone who had tried to force it open long ago. As he studied the metal, he noticed faint symbols scratched into the surface, symbols that glowed faintly in the lamplight. They were not human letters, not any language he had ever seen before. The sight made his blood run cold. He stepped back, whispering to himself that it was just some trick, maybe marks from the old owner. But deep inside he knew the truth. Those markings were not made by human hands. The hum grew louder, echoing through the door like a whisper of warning. It was not a door to a basement, it was a door to something else. For hours he sat staring at it, torn between fear and curiosity. Every beat of his heart seemed to match the pulse rising from below. Finally, unable to resist, he grabbed a metal bar and struck the old lock. The sound cracked through the cabin, sharp and violent. The lock held at first, but with another strike it broke open. Falling heavily to the floor, the man froze. His breath caught in his throat. The silence that followed was unnatural, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Slowly, with both hands, he pulled the door open. The hinges screamed like a dying creature, and cold air rushed out, chilling his skin. What lay below was not darkness, it was a faint blue glow shining from deep under the earth. A narrow spiral staircase stretched downward, carved from stone but smooth as glass. It descended farther than his eyes could follow, vanishing into the strange light below. He lifted the lamp and took one cautious step. The air grew colder and the hum grew louder. Vibrating through his bones, each step echoed like a drumbeat. Carrying him deeper into the hidden earth, the walls were covered in more of the strange symbols. Glowing faintly as he passed, they seemed to move when he looked too long. Twisting and reshaping themselves, it was as if the walls were alive, whispering secrets he could not understand. The staircase turned again and again, endless and tight. Finally he reached the bottom, and what he saw stole the breath from his chest. The chamber was enormous, far larger than the cabin above. Pillars of crystal rose from the ground, glowing with soft light. Strange machines hummed around the edges, their surfaces shining with a metal he had never seen before. In the center stood a massive pod, sealed and pulsing like a giant heart. The hum that had haunted his nights was coming from it, strong and steady. The man stepped closer, his lamp trembling in his hand. He could see wires and tubes running from the pod into the walls, feeding it energy. The surface of the pod was dark, but when he touched it, it glowed faintly. A shock ran through his arm, and the machines around him flickered to life. The chamber lit up with alien symbols, bright and sharp. The air itself seemed to vibrate with power. Then he heard it, a voice, not clear, not human, but deep and broken. It echoed inside his head, not through his ears. The words were twisted, but he understood fragments. Prison. Weapon. Do not awaken. His hand shook as he pulled back, his heart racing. The pod's glow grew brighter, pulsing faster like it was responding to his presence. The man stumbled back toward the staircase, fear rising in his chest. But the door above had already closed on its own. Trapping him in the chamber, the voice grew louder, filling his mind with words he could not ignore. He realized the truth. The cabin had never been built for humans. It was a seal, a cover, hiding something buried long ago. And now, by opening the door, he had set it free. The pod pulsed again. Brighter and faster, something inside was waking. Something that had been locked away not for years, not for centuries, but for ages. The man stood frozen, his lamp flickering, his heart pounding. Whatever was inside that pod was never meant to see the light again, but now it was too late. The forbidden chamber. The man stood frozen, his eyes locked on the glowing pod. The chamber around him felt alive, the crystals pulsing, the machines breathing with a rhythm older than humanity itself. The hum he had heard every night was no longer faint. It was thunder in his chest. Shaking his bones, he had opened a door that was never meant to be opened. And now he stood before something that should have remained buried forever. He stepped closer to the pod, his lamp shaking in his hand. The symbols on the walls burned brighter as if they were watching him. He could feel a strange pressure in his head, like thoughts that were not his own pushing into his mind. The voice returned, stronger this time, deep and layered. As if thousands spoke together, the words broke into his brain. You are not ready. You are not the first. You must leave. He stumbled back, his heart racing. Not the first? That meant others had found this place before him. Had they vanished? Had the cabin's old owners opened this door and disappeared into silence? The thought made his skin crawl. He lifted the lamp higher, casting light across the chamber. And then he saw it, bones scattered near the machines. Human bones, dry and broken, half buried in dust. The man's stomach twisted, fear clawing at his throat. Who were they? Explorers? Or prisoners? Some had tools, some had torn clothing. All had fallen near the glowing machines. Their empty eye sockets seemed to stare at him. A warning written in death. He wanted to run. But the staircase had sealed behind him. The only way out was forward. The pod's surface shifted, glowing lines spreading across it like veins of light. The hum grew louder, and the ground trembled beneath his feet. He watched in horror as the pod began to split open down the center. Cold mist spilled out, rolling across the floor like a creeping fog. His breath clouded in the freezing air. He knew he should turn away, but his body refused to move. The pod opened wider, and inside he saw a figure. Not human, not alive, but something in between. Its skin was pale silver, its face hidden behind a mask of black metal. Long wires ran into its chest, keeping it sealed, keeping it asleep. The voice thundered again inside his head. Do not free me. I was bound for a reason. I will end what remains. The man gasped, shaking his head. Who are you? He whispered. Though his voice was small and lost in the chamber, the figure stirred, its fingers twitching as the glow around it brightened. The machines answered, their lights flashing faster. The crystals cracked with sharp echoes, releasing sparks of energy that danced across the chamber walls. It was not just a machine, not just an alien body, it was a weapon waiting for someone foolish enough to wake it. Suddenly the walls shifted, revealing more markings, not warnings but records, stories drawn in glowing lines. He saw images of galaxies burning, fleets of ships torn apart, planets erased by a single wave of energy. The figure inside the pod had done this before. It was not only a prisoner, it was a destroyer. The man fell to his knees, terror filling him as he understood the scale of what he had found. The voice pressed harder into his mind. You are human. The weak ones. You were never meant to find this place. The man shook, clutching his head, but another voice rose behind the first, weaker but clearer. If you run, they will come. They are already listening. He froze, lifting his eyes. The pod glowed brighter, and a sudden pulse of energy shot upward through the ceiling. The forest above shook, the cabin's windows shattered, and a beam of light climbed into the night sky. It was a signal, a call sent across the stars. The man gasped, realizing the truth. It was not only waking the prisoner, it was alerting others who would answer. Allies or enemies? He stumbled back toward the staircase, pounding his fists against the sealed door. But the chamber did not let him leave. The glow grew so strong it painted his skin in blue fire. The figure in the pod lifted its head, and though its mask hid its eyes, he felt its gaze pierce through him. The hum turned into a roar, the machines rattled, and the bones on the floor shook as if moved by unseen hands. The voice inside his mind spoke one final time. Colder than death, you have opened the forbidden chamber. The galaxy will remember this night. The man fell against the wall, his lamp dying, his breath frozen. He was no longer just a man escaping the city. No longer a wanderer searching for peace, he had become a key, a spark that unlocked something vast and terrible. And as the pod's final locks hissed open, the chamber drowned in light, a light that was not meant for human eyes. The awakening. The chamber shook like the earth itself was alive. The man pressed his back against the cold wall. His eyes locked on the pod as it opened wider. Mist poured across the floor, swallowing the bones and machines in a ghostly haze. The hum became a roar, and the crystals around the chamber cracked open, releasing bursts of white energy. The silence of the forest above was gone, replaced by thunder rising from the deep. The figure inside the pod began to move, its chest rose slowly, as if taking its first breath in centuries. the black mask covering its face lit with streaks of blue, glowing like veins of fire. Its arms broke free from the cables that had held it prisoner. Every step it took made the ground tremble. Every motion filled the chamber with power. The man could not breathe, his heart slamming in his chest. He wanted to scream, to run, but his body was frozen. The voice thundered again inside his mind, clearer than ever. Your world is small. Your kind is blind. You should not have found me. The sound was not just words, it was pain, it was rage, it was power. It pushed into his skull until he thought his head would split open. The machines around the chamber flickered and twisted. Holographic maps appeared in the air, showing stars, planets, and fleets. He recognized Earth among them, small, fragile, glowing blue. Lines of red light crossed through it, marking it as a target. The man's stomach dropped, terror flooding him. This was not just a prisoner. It was a weapon designed to erase worlds. The figure raised its hand and the machines obeyed. Energy surged through the chamber, shooting upward in a blinding column of light. The forest above shook violently, trees bending and snapping, animals fleeing in panic. The cabin exploded outward, shattered into pieces as if it had never been. The night sky above opened with a blinding signal. Piercing through clouds and stars, it was a call that no human could block. A signal that screamed across the galaxy. The man collapsed to his knees, clutching his head. He heard new voices now, alien voices, answering the call. Whispers of warlords, hunters, and empires that had been waiting for this signal. They had been listening for ages, waiting for the moment the seal was broken. And now humanity had delivered it to them. The figure turned toward him, towering in its silver form. Its mask reflected the blue light of the chamber, hiding the face beneath. Still, the man felt the weight of its gaze like a blade pressing into his skin. You are human, the voice said inside him. You are weak, yet your kind has unlocked my prison. Why? The man stammered, unable to form words, his voice lost in the roar of power around them. He shook his head, tears burning his eyes. I didn't know. I just wanted silence. The chamber trembled harder, dust falling from the ceiling. The alien's voice rose, shaking the walls. Silence is over. War returns. The galaxy will burn again. The pod behind it shattered into pieces, releasing waves of cold air that froze the machines where they stood. The crystals dimmed, their energy drained into the figure's body. It was fully awake now and nothing could stop it, but then something unexpected happened. The alien stumbled, its hand clutching its chest as if in pain. The man blinked in shock. How could something so powerful falter? The voice in his head cracked, the words twisting. I was not freed before. You carry the key. He looked down at his arm and saw faint blue lines glowing under his skin, where he had touched the pod earlier. The realization hit him like fire. He had become connected to it. Part of its prison had passed into him, binding them together. The alien straightened, its glow returning. But now its voice was not only rage, it was confusion. It stared at him longer, and for the first time, the man felt something else in the presence of its power. Not just destruction, but choice. The chamber grew silent for a moment, the hum lowering, as if waiting for what would happen next above. The signal beam still tore across the sky. Across the stars, fleets of ships stirred, war engines awakening. The galaxy had heard the call, and soon they would arrive. The man looked at the alien, his heart filled with fear and fire. He knew one thing for certain: whatever was coming, humanity could no longer hide. The awakening was complete, and the fate of the galaxy had shifted forever. The final choice. The night sky above the forest was no longer dark. The beam of light from the hidden chamber tore through the heavens, a signal that no race in the galaxy could ignore. In distant stars, fleets stirred, empires awakened, warlords sharpened their blades. The man had wanted peace in a lonely cabin, but instead he had invited war to his world. Inside the chamber, the alien figure stood tall, its mask glowing with endless power. It was no longer just a prisoner, no longer a secret. It was a force that had shaken galaxies before humanity even learned to walk. The man, trembling and breathless, felt the burning blue lines crawling deeper into his arm. He realized the truth. He was now part of the machine. Part of the weapon's seal. If he moved, the alien felt it. If he breathed, the chamber reacted. He was the key and the lock. The alien's voice thundered in his mind. You are bound to me, human. Your touch woke me. Your body holds the chain. The fate of this galaxy rests on your choice. The man staggered back, shaking his head. "I never wanted this," he whispered, his voice cracking. The alien leaned closer, its shadow covering him like a mountain of steel. "No one ever wants the burden, but someone must carry it," the chamber flashed, showing visions all around him. Galaxies burning, planets turned to ash, alien fleets crushed in silence, and then another vision. Earth. His home, his people, standing proud but unprepared. They had no armies strong enough, no weapons vast enough, no idea of the danger that now rushed toward them. The man felt tears in his eyes, his heart heavy. If he walked away, humanity would die if he tried to control the weapon. The galaxy might burn. The alien stretched out its hand. "Decide, human. Seal me again and your world will be spared for now, but when they arrive you will be too weak. Or use me and you will have power beyond imagination. But the cost will be everything you know." The man's chest ached, his mind torn apart by fear and rage. Above them, the signal beam grew brighter, piercing deeper into the stars. He could already feel presences answering the call, ships racing toward Earth. The galaxy had heard, and there was no turning back. The chamber's walls cracked, crystals shattering as the alien's power grew stronger. The man clutched his glowing arm, screaming as the lines of light spread across his body. He was no longer just himself. He was becoming part of the chamber, part of the weapon. The alien's voice pressed harder into him. "Choose now. Or the galaxy will choose for you." He looked at the broken bones on the floor, the forgotten explorers who had failed before him. He saw their silence, their hopeless end. He knew he could not let humanity suffer the same fate. With trembling hands, he stepped forward, staring into the alien's glowing mask. "I will not be your slave," he said, his voice stronger than he felt. "But I will not let my people die." The alien paused, its head tilting for the first time. The chamber grew quiet, the hum softening. The man pressed his glowing hand against the heart of the pod. Energy surged through him, fire and ice tearing through his veins. The alien roared, a sound that shook the walls and split the ground. But instead of breaking, the power bent. Shifting, obeying him, the beam in the sky twisted, no longer a call for war but a warning. A shockwave burst outward, racing across the stars faster than light. Every fleet that had stirred felt its power. Every empire heard its echo. It was not just a signal anymore, it was a message. Humanity was no longer silent, no longer hidden. A single man in a lonely cabin had awakened something that made the galaxy tremble. The alien staggered back, its mask glowing brighter. "You are human. Yet you command," it whispered, its voice filled with disbelief. The man fell to his knees, his body burning with power he could not contain, but he smiled through the pain, his voice steady. "Humanity will not run. Not anymore." The chamber began to collapse, crystals shattering, machines exploding in bursts of light. The forest above split open as the ground shook. The cabin gone forever. The man felt himself sinking into the light, his body dissolving into something larger. The alien's roar echoed in his skull one final time. "The galaxy will come. They will test you. And if you fail, all will end." The light swallowed everything. When it cleared, the cabin was gone. The chamber was gone. Only a crater remained, glowing faintly with blue fire, and in the night sky above, the stars no longer looked the same. They burned brighter, sharper, as if countless eyes were staring back at Earth, waiting, judging, preparing. The man's fate was uncertain. Had he become the weapon, or had he sealed it within himself? No one knew, not even him. But one truth was clear. Humanity's silence was broken. The galaxy had heard their voice, and nothing would ever be the same again.